Hello and welcome to Deep in Pact, proud member of the Duff Network, where we dive deep into Wildbo's most forgotten work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back to talk about Signature 8.5. The arc of our nameless protagonist continues, and I really like the first line of this chapter, I suppose. It's italicized, which is kind of like it's ex-Maggie thinking this funny little witticism to herself, which I like. And she thinks, from the witch's hut to meeting Hansel and Gretel, which is just like, it puts us back in the fairy tale mindset, obviously, and it also kind of hints at who we're going to meet, because of all the characters that we know, obviously, none of them really fit the Hansel and Gretel motif, except for the witch hunters.
Yeah.
It's like a little teaser. It's awesome.
No, you're right. It's really clever. It reminds us where we were. Like, it instantly reminds us about all of the Crone Mara horror shit. It instantly, like, Hansel and Gretel, I think most people probably instantly tied that to Andy and Eva.
Yeah. Did you, that clicked for you?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it had clicked for me the first time around, and obviously I kind of understood that this was going to happen, or in the broad sense, I knew the characters a little bit better this time around, because obviously we've interacted with Andy in like one chapter, and Ava has had like maybe one paragraph, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, but I guess they've always been kind of fascinating. So there were a set of characters I always wanted to learn more about. But I like this. I like this opening line because it reminds us where we've been. It sort of tells us where we're going, and really like fits in with sort of ex-Maggie's train of thought and what she thinks of these people. It's doing a lot to open the chapter.
Yeah. So after she thinks this, we basically follow Scarf Girl as she looks through. She kind of makes her way to her next best choice, her second choice for help. Kind of reflecting on and being careful to avoid goblin habitats, I suppose, as she makes her way through Jacob's Bell.
Yeah, and I don't think there's really any new information here that we learn about goblins or their habits. Like, really, there's maybe some clearer details or examples, but like this section just emphasizes what a blight goblins are. Like, I guess I didn't appreciate the scale that they can operate on. Like, it seems like there are basically entire neighborhoods where they're kind of keeping the poor down.
Yeah, they're very much a blight on the working class, right? Like, ex-Maggie explicitly calls out how rich people, goblins won't bother them. But if you're already down on your luck, this is going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty blatant class metaphor. You know, like it's barely even a metaphor.
Yeah, I don't even think it is a metaphor.
It's just an additional explanation in the world of Pact as to why, another system that's designed to keep poor people poor.
And I suppose this kind of feeds back into what Maggie was thinking about with practitioners seeing themselves as kind of a cut above the rest, right? They're the in the know class, and the ignorant class don't have the ability to protect themselves from this stuff.
Yeah, altruism with regards to this stuff isn't in much supply.
Yeah. So the other thing that we get here, which I think is nice, is we right from the start of this chapter, ex-Maggie is kind of demonstrating that she doesn't have all of her power back yet, but she's got access to her knowledge of goblins, and that's kind of a power in and of itself, right? She's kind of setting herself back up as the competent person that we knew, I suppose.
Yeah, it's cool. Like Wildbo uses it to sort of give us a bunch of exposition about various things to do with Jacob's Bell and goblins, while sort of tying it into this utility that like ex-Maggie is using this information to find this house, which is why he, gets to explain it. It's good writing.
Yeah, it's a cool trick as well, isn't it? Because she's not like this goblin knowledge, because she's able to kind of see the damage that goblins do, she can detect where practitioners live. I mean, that's a cool trick. And it lets her figure out where Andy and Ava live. And then she kind of speaks to some local kids in order to get more info on them.
I love how she opens like the thought. Like she decides she's gonna talk to these kids, and she's like, I got to form some connections regardless of how strong they are, and then just immediately goes aggro on them.
She's not used to being nice, is she?
Yeah, this whole conversation, she's kind of unnecessarily aggressive.
Yeah.
Just there's a lot of hostility coming off of her in this.
Yeah, I'm going to read out the way she starts this interaction because I think it's adorable. She says to them, "Hey, little dorks!" One boy poked his head out of the hole in progress. Clumps of snow clung to the fabric of his hat. "Dorks? We aren't in the 2000s anymore." Which is just a great comeback. And it's these kinds of little, interactions that really define why I think I enjoy Warbo's story so much. It's just these kinds of little bits that really make you feel like you're in a living world.
Yeah, they're fun little side bits that also add a layer of realism. I guess, this just feels like a fun little interaction that could happen. It's nice. It's nice dressing over the salad of the chapter.
Yeah, totally. And again, ex-Maggie has, when she wasn't ex-Maggie, I suppose, Maggie showed some proficiency in handling conversations like this. Speaking with Blake and Rose specifically, right? She kind of was able to hold her own in some of these conversations. And this conversation she has with the kids kind of gives me a bit of that vibe. Again, continuing the theme, I think, of this chapter of ex-Maggie getting her mojo back, I suppose. Which is probably due to just the fact that she was able to have a bit of a rest, get connections and kindness from Sandra, and kind of come back into the world a bit more.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think she's mentally in a better position than she was 12 hours ago. But she seems even more aggressive than usual, or that she needed to be in this. And so while I agree that maybe she's sort of getting her mojo back, particularly by the end of the chapter, part of me thinks that some of this is just her kind of subconsciously venting a bit of her anger and paranoia and all that into this conversation.
Well, if we want to get even more paranoid about it, I mean, we know that she's obviously pretty weak at the moment. And when this came up with Blake, the idea that Fel had was something's got to fill the gaps there. Maybe the fact that she's more aggressive is a sign of something, I don't know, something getting in there.
Maybe.
The other thing this conversation with the kids does for us is kind of plant seeds for Andy and Ava's characterization that will kind of get backed up later. One bit in particular is ex-Maggie finds out that Andy kind of helped take care of some unnamed other problem that was affecting the kind of people in his neighborhood, which is just a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't get to go back and read whenever Andy showed up. I think it was the very last chapter of Arc 3, except for Sandra's interlude.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to jump into that, which I really wanted to, because, I mean, most of what we saw of Andy in this chapter lines up with the memory I had of him before, but I think he gave some more details on his past, and he does just seem like a cool dude.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I'm able to kind of put my finger on it a bit more since we've been talking about it. And I think it's the line that I draw in my head between people that I like in this story and people that I don't like is their willingness to stick up for kind of non-practitioners, muggles, right? I think all the characters that I like are the ones who are willing to stick up for muggles and kind of help protect them from this threat that they can't know about. Andy, Maggie, Blake, these kind of characters that seem to give a shit, and that makes me really like them.
See, I think I'm just as bad as the spirits. I'm one of the spirits. I just like the ones who are fun.
You're horrible. You're encouraging Podrick and his kind of shenanigans.
Exactly.
So ex-Maggie keeps talking to these kids, and the kids kind of give her enough info on Andy and Ava's house that she kind of feels comfortable knocking on the front door, which of course goes horribly because Ava's the only one home, and Ava answers, and Ava, as we will find out, is a fucking psychopath.
So, ex-Maggie was pretty much told that Andy wasn't going to be there. I guess time's an issue, but I don't know. It seems like it might have been worth just waiting it out.
Yeah, I mean, ex-Maggie didn't really achieve anything in the time that it was just her and Ava, except maybe making Andy feel bad enough that he goes along with her plan later. So I don't know.
I was thinking that, like, in a roundabout way, maybe everything good that happens to ex-Maggie at the end of this is really Ava's, doing. She's playing 4D chess, Ruben.
Yeah, I'm sure that we can say it's her doing. I mean, kind of, but I don't know if we can say that it's intentional. I don't think she's intentionally
almost
a dick to
certainly
people, right? Just to make Andy help them because he feels bad.
Unless she's brilliantly and consistently putting on a persona, I don't get the impression that this would have been an intentional thing by her.
No, she's a psychopath though, right? Like, and I guess we're gonna hit this beat a few times throughout their conversation, but she's just fucking with ex-Maggie for no reason. And I think she gets the award for the first human character that I actually actively hate. Like, even like Duncan is like, you hate him in a fun kind of way, right? But Ava,
sure.
just there's no redeeming qualities about her, in my opinion.
I mean, I think
at least none that we've seen so far.
I think the line that makes her seem like psychotic is really when ex-Maggie first opens the door and Eva's pointing a crossbow at her, and ex-Maggie thinks her eyes, not the crossbow, were the most concerning thing.
Yeah.
And I think that just immediately gets you into that headspace of this girl is not fucking around. It turns out she actually is, but like in a really fucked up way.
Yeah, I mean, this is her idea of, I don't know, goofing off, I guess.
I mean, I think Andy said some stuff about her. I really wish I could have gone back and read like 3.6 or whatever it was. But I don't know. I get the impression she's just someone who is probably in a really shit situation and is just, really angry and lashing out. I don't know. I guess, not that really makes any of it okay, but I'm not ready to write her off as just a psycho. She's just someone who is not coping well at all.
Of course. And of course I know that by saying that this is a character with no redeeming qualities, the very next chapter is going to be an interlude that makes me totally on her side. But like, everybody in this world is in a position of being backed into a corner and not having any way to escape their fate, right? Like, literally every character we've met has had some aspect of that theme to their story.
Yeah, I mean, Blake apparently led, Andy himself.
Yep. Fell.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to handle this situation, and Eva's not doing a good job of it.
Yeah, so I'm going to allow myself to judge her based on the fact that I'm judging everybody off of an equal standard here, and she's just not taking a good response, and that's, I don't know. Anyway, so Ava is holding our point of view here at crossbow point, lightly interrogating her, but mainly just tormenting her for the fun of it, right?
Yeah, I was honestly, I mean, we have this sort of fake out where Ava pulls the trigger, and it just doesn't hit ex-Maggie, but I genuinely believed for a second it had, because it wouldn't be the first friggin' protagonist in this story to
get killed,
like just get a fatal wound,
to get shot by an arrow. Wait, no, I guess Blake was never shot by the arrows. That was Fel and Alexis. But anyway,
So I was genuinely very on edge. I when Andy reveals later that she was just fucking with, I was genuinely like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Ava is pointlessly cruel, right? And the other thing to me about this is she doesn't. This is something that Andy kind of points out later. She doesn't think through the ramifications of her actions, right? Andy kind of puts it in a good way when he says, hey, you can't just torment people that you don't plan on killing. And obviously, he and I would disagree with some of the parts of this message, but he says, you can't just torment somebody that you don't plan on killing, because, like, you're just going to build up a mass of people hating you. Which is basically what I'm thinking, more or less. It's if you blur your eyes, that's more or less my point. Which is, Ava doesn't think through her actions at all, and it just makes me dislike her. Not only is she cruel, she's unintelligent.
She definitely strikes me as a very reckless and impulsive person, which I believe is a reputation Maggie Holt had a bit herself. But yeah, she's obviously very violent and reckless, and I do just have this image of someone who's very angry at something that happened in her past and is lashing out.
Yeah.
Like she explicitly says she doesn't plan to live to 30. So,
yeah.
I mean, she's clearly, ex-Maggie basically says she doesn't seem to be in a good headspace based on how dirty their house is. And like, that is not the only clue.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're making me feel a bit bad for her, Elliot, but I'm going to stick to my guns here. I dislike her. I'm keeping it there. Until we get to some Ava interlude, I'm writing her off. But luckily, the cool twin comes back home. Andy comes back home in time to rein her in a bit. He gets back home and immediately the situation kind of starts to de-escalate.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy has Eva sort of under control-ish, mostly under control.
I would kind of say it's he kind of recognizes her bullshit for what it is, and he's kind of able to cut through it.
Oh, and he's safe from it. Like, as twins, I guess they have some sort of connection. Like, even though they're clearly very different people, there's something holding them together. I think Andy talked a lot about how he had to protect her way back in 3.6.
Yeah.
I like how he takes her chocolate away as punishment.
Yeah. It's great. It's perfect.
It feels very petty and, like contrasts with how violent Eva is towards everyone else. That he can just sort of take her chocolate away.
The thing about it that I love is that's a legitimate punishment. Like she seems quite pissed off by that. Yeah. Like, and it gives you the vibe of Andy being kind of her babysitter, right? He's set up a system of rules that she has to follow to keep her kind of in check, because otherwise she'll just do dumb shit. Like exactly this. And he kind of calls out the new rule of no threatening people that you aren't planning to kill, which I guess is an okay rule.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely feels like he's playing that role of, the older sibling who's having to look after the littler siblings when the parents aren't able to anymore. But he's not really an older sibling and she's not really a child anymore. So, I mean, you could, I'll just be interested to see more about how they ended up where they did.
They're like early 20s, mid 20s.
I think so, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, too old for some of this shit, Ava. And the thing about it as well, I'm just going to get back on my Ava hate train for a second here, because as Andy is coming back, Ava says something to the effect of, oh, bummer, he's going to spoil my fun, right? Which again means that she's self-aware enough to know that what she's doing is dumb. Like, what she's doing is stupid. She knows it, and she still does it. I hate her so much. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Andy's back, and cooler heads prevail. Ex-Maggie kind of explains her situation to Andy, and Andy kind of immediately realizes that he should help her out. She's going to kind of go deal with some others, and so he's kind of like, yep, I'm cool with that. And also, he just seems like a nice guy, so he wants to help her out. And he agrees to help her out, I suppose. It's not like pulling teeth. He's just a nice guy, and so practitioners and aligned folk, I suppose, can just be nice to each other.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I did still expect him to say no, because it's handing out weapons to a practitioner when she's made it clear that she's planning on going and confronting another practitioner, like that's very easily sending the wrong messages. So, I don't know. I think this is interesting that Andy's altruism, I guess, sort of prevails over what's probably the more long-term tactical solution. Like, I could see, the witch hunters and their role in the council would sort of imply that they're meant to try and stay as neutral as possible.
Yeah, but I think there's also an element of them being a resource for the council rather than being outside of the council. Like they are neutral, but in the way that they should help people neutrally, not help nobody.
Yeah, but like helping her by arming her with a bunch of weapons is
I
arguable.
Suppose.
Like,
I suppose you're right.
I agree with this decision that he's made. I'm just interested into learning a bit more about why he was just almost instantly like, yeah, we can do that. Because it's I mean, just giving someone weapons. She could obviously swear not to use it on them. But I don't even think he actually makes her do that.
No, he's very cool about it. He basically opens up, the secret drawer full of guns and says, "Here, choose whatever you want."
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the interesting things, and this was true back in the Arc 3 as well. Andy and Eva have almost consistently been the most openly honest people throughout the story. I guess Eva fucks with Maggie a bit this chapter, but it's one of the things Pact has taught me is that forcing everyone to be truthful doesn't really mean anything. In fact, I'd actually argue that forcing everyone to tell the truth all the time has actually encouraged deception in the world of Pact, because there's this sense of, oh, well, I technically told the truth. It's it's almost normalized that kind of technicality deception where everyone's always watching their words and trying to trick each other. And it's almost like the people who don't have to worry about that shit are kind of just the most openly honest. Andy is just sort of walking around being like, oh yeah, he's just sort of remember, deals, we don't have to stick to deals. If we change our mind, we can just do that. And Eva's pretty open with most people from the looks of it about how she wants to kill them. So
that's a kind of honesty.
It's not a good kind, but it's a kind.
No, yeah, you're right. One of the things I like, and I liked when we first saw Andy, was when Blake asked him a question like, "Oh, what has Laird done here?" His response was like, "Look, I'm not going to tell you the truth, so don't worry about it." Basically, don't ask me because I'm not going to tell you the truth.
He could have just lied.
It's such a refreshing response. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, I find it interesting, and I feel like Wildbow's trying to send us a message here with the people in the story who can't or who can lie are almost the only ones who aren't.
Who else can lie of the characters that we know?
You've got we've met some other Muggles and the Blackguards, obviously.
Yeah, true.
But most of the Blackguards we've seen again have been some of the most chill, cool people. They're obviously either Blake's friends, or
I can't remember the name of the one from the Knights, but she seemed pretty chill.
I think the only other one I can think of is Paige, but I mean, it seems pretty clear she's jumping headfirst into this world, so she doesn't count.
Yeah. Totally. Maybe we're confusing cause and effect here, and the types of people who are wanting to tell the truth aren't the types of people who would become practitioners.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that as well, right?
Yeah, it probably goes both ways. Yeah.
Anyway, so Andy offers ex-Maggie a pick of weapons, and ex-Maggie picks some weapons. The only one we actually see her take at this point is a pipe. But pipe in hand, she heads back outside.
Oh, this whole time I was just like, but what does the pipe do? Because she was like, does this actually work?
Yeah, I know. It's definitely set up that we're going to see it. It's a Chekhov's pipe for sure. And luckily it pays off before the end of the chapter.
Yeah, I was very worried it was going to wait till next chapter, but instead we've got a whole other thing for next chapter. But again, I was just very surprised. I kind of assumed Andy was going to give her a weapon and let her go. Yeah. But they just gave her pick.
No, he's chill. Yeah, totally. He's Andy for Lord of Jacob's Bell. I'm calling it now. He's the coolest character.
I mean,
anyway.
Yeah, honestly, you're joking, but he seems like he actually cares about people, which is a nice attribute in leaders, in my opinion.
Yeah, but doesn't seem to be a prerequisite for being a lord from what we've seen of Toronto with Conquest and Elder Sister.
I don't know. I found Eva and Andy both super fascinating. I'm keen to learn more about them. I'm hoping for some interludes at some point.
Look, I'm keen to see more of Andy. I'll say that much. Anyway, weapons in tow, ex-Maggie heads back out onto the town, and almost immediately the goblins are there. They find her almost immediately.
Yeah, well, I love how difficult the town is becoming for her. Again, it sort of reminds me of Blake when he was outside the police station after his first run-in with Dunko, where people weren't noticing him because he was sort of barely in the mortal realm. It kind of feels like that's what's happening to Maggie here, but for some reason the universe is dumping on her even harder than it did Blake when it happened to him.
Well, I mean, Blake presumably had some karma from Isadora at some point around there. Maybe at that point. It's not quite clear, but
my memories aren't clear enough. Yeah.
So ex-Maggie runs into these goblins and pretty efficiently is able to kind of reassert herself as a goblin queen, right? Like, she's confident, she's on point. It kind of feels like she has her mojo back. It's cathartic.
Yeah, definitely. Like, she's just got a bit of confidence now because of these weapons, and she's obviously in a much better mental state, and she just kind of owns it. Like, it's very performative, which obviously would have helped. The spirit, like,
yeah.
You know, as someone who just compared themselves to one of the spirits earlier, I was like, this was fucking badass, and I enjoyed every second of it. And I imagine the spirits did too.
Yeah, you can basically... I mean, the spirits are basically analogous to the audience anyway, right?
Yeah,
to the readers.
Yeah, exactly.
So if Maggie's impressing us, then she's impressing the spirits.
Pretty much.
I want to call out what I think might be the grossest part of Pact so far. The new frontrunner. What was the previous winner? I think it was when Blake murders those animals around Pose's house. That probably was the grossest part.
Some of the stuff Pose said to Laird in the circles was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Obviously, just the whole chapter after Blake bound Pose in Craig Doubt's house still haunts me.
Yeah. But, those were all Pose moments. Along comes Buttsack, possibly to upset the crown here. Buttsack says, to ex-Maggie, of course, "When you're dead by my hands, I'm going to cut the skin off of your face," he growled, "and I'm going to make it a thong. I'll wear it so your lips are stretched tight against my butthole, and your eyes will have a close-up view of my cock, with balls bulging out one hole and schlong out the other." Sorry, I tried to get through that whole thing without giggling, but schlong at the end got to me there. Yeah, horrible, horrifying, and still I like him more than ever.
Yeah, I agree. It's horrible. It's terrifying. I kind of loved it though. But these wacky goblin antics. Yeah.
Can you call it wacky when it's so brutally violent? I feel like wacky implies a certain whimsicalness that this level of grime can't deal with.
I guess because I was pretty confident in how ex-Maggie was going to go, I didn't find this too frightening. I was able to enjoy the absurdity of it, I guess is the best word.
Yeah.
Fair. I mean, he has a great follow-up as well to this, where he talks about how he'll imbue it with her ghosts to keep it moving. Oh god,
that's such a good line as well.
Actually, my favorite part of that line is his opening, where he's like, "I'm going to kill you so horribly you'll leave a dozen ghosts," which is actually just straight up, no context. That's a great threat in this world. I was just like, that's really clever. I'm surprised it came from Buttsacking because it was surrounded by all this gross stuff, but in the middle there I was like, that's a really solid threat.
He was prepping that since a few nights ago.
Probably
since last night, whatever it was. So we find out what Chekhov's pipe was for. It's a pipe shotgun. She slams the two parts of the pipe together and it shoots out shrapnel, something presumably, and pretty efficiently incapacitates Buttsack. And with Buttsack incapacitated, ex-Maggie kind of uses this to threaten the other goblins enough that they back off. And then she carts his body into Johannes's domain for some reason. We're not sure why.
She's dragging him by hands that she's knifed together as well, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
She's
so he's still alive at this point, right?
Yeah, she's keeping him alive for some reason. And
who knows?
I can't wait to find out what.
Yeah, we'll see, I suppose. And before the chapter ends, ex-Maggie has a run-in with a ogre, who approaches her, and she says, "I'm a practitioner," she said. "You can't touch me. Johannes's rules." When the ogre spoke, it was with a British-ish accent. "Not for long, little girl." I should have put on a British accent, but I'm not confident in my ability to do it. Anyway, I just love this as the end to the chapter, because it's got the ominous cliffhanger of the ogre saying "not for long," which implies, who knows what, maybe that she's going to become other enough soon that she's fair game, so she's not going to be a practitioner anymore.
That was my understanding of what he meant.
Yeah, or Johannes's rules are going to change, maybe. But the idea of this giant ogre having a posh British accent is also quite hilarious. So it's a great end to the chapter for two reasons.
Well, I mean, obviously, villains with a British accent's a bit of a trope. So the spirits,
but they're always
the spirits are forcing all villains to have British accents.
But usually villains with British accents are like dapper, whereas this is a giant ogre. I mean, maybe he's dapper. I don't know. Anyway, and then the final line of the chapter is: she set her jaw and continued forward, moving more easily, even with her limp and bleeding burden. Yeah, moving more easily. She's back in form. She's got her mojo back.
Yeah, and I love how these two sort of end bits contrast each other. Like the ogre has that ominous, not for long little girl, which sort of reminds you the shaky ground that our protagonist is on right now. But then we sort of ended on this note of she's picking it up a bit. I don't know how much of it's because she's in whatever the fuck you call Johann's domain. Like, is it the spirit world, the vestige world? I don't know.
The spirit world.
She's a bit stronger right now. And
yeah, true. That might be it, actually.
like, it could be that. It could be a little bit because she just did some kick-ass shit. Like, could be both. But, there's sort of like this little optimistic bit right after we get the reminder that she's in trouble.
Yeah. 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 And that rounds out this chapter. A moderately short chapter, but kind of a nice one to set up where Maggie's going. Sorry, ex-Maggie. And showing her kind of clawing back some of herself.
Yeah. And so, quickly before we go, I think one thing I wanted to talk about is... So, I think more than any of Blake's arcs, we've got a pretty decent look at, like, the suburbs of Jacob's Bell. And, like, unless ex-Maggie's narration is particularly biased, it does seem like it's in a pretty sorry state as a town. Like, one of the things that we were getting hit with a lot early on in the story was that a lot of people hated the Thorburns because apparently the Thorburn house was for some reason the main thing stopping Jacob's Bell from growing. And so people hated the Thorburns because they were getting in the way of everyone, like, having their property prices go up and getting rich. Yeah. And I mean, if that's remotely true, based on what we saw from ex-Maggie's point of view around the town, that actually seems kind of fair. Because, we've hated on the council for keeping this shitty situation where they're keeping the downtrodden down. And, if the Thorburn house is a big part of that, then at least Rose Sr. is, on the chop for that as well.
I'm kind of not sold on the idea that bigger city means better for everybody, though, right? Like, I don't know. I guess we can kind of contrast Toronto, the big city, Jacob's Bell, the medium-sized city, and we saw Maggie's hometown as an example of what can happen when things go really bad in a small town, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I do think the net change would be positive, because my understanding is as Jacob's Bell grows, it gets a lord, that turns it into more of a real-world city as well. Like, the two worlds line up in that way. And so I agree it's probably not better for everybody, but I think the net gains would be probably positive.
I don't know. We might be getting a bit too political here, but I can kind of compare it to how, if the economy grows in general, maybe that will help kind of the middle class a bit. But the person that really benefits, the people that really benefits are the elites, right?
Yeah.
I can easily see that. And of course it could go either way, obviously, but I can kind of easily see a reality where Jacob's Bell grows to whatever, a larger city, and the people who benefit are the Duchamps and the Behaims, and the others just have more of an area of kind of impoverished people to feed upon, as kind of happens in big cities. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too negative.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so before we wrap up this chapter, I wanted to dive into some comments from 5 years ago when this chapter first came out. We've gone through and found some comments that we liked to see what people were saying 5 years ago. Elliot, do you want to start us off?
Yes, so I've picked out a comment by Unmaker. And Unmaker, just sort of has an interesting idea talking about how one of the reasons Eva might be really effective as a witch hunter is because she's kind of so psychotic and maybe can just sort of be unpredictable because she's kind of pathological. Like what Unmaker sort of talks about is there's not that much room for practitioners to go insane. Like you have to go insane in a very specific way, because most types of insanity will probably cause you to, maybe forswear yourself
right
at some point,
yeah.
whereas Eva is kind of free to get as crazy as she wants, and she can still be effective in some ways. So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting idea on, like, particularly in general, why witch hunters can be so effective. Because practitioners mostly deal with others, and others also seem to universally have to tell the truth. So witch hunters really stand out for that reason.
I don't want to play Ava's advocate here, but I will for a second, because the other thing that this makes me think is, I get the sense that a lot of practitioners, when they go up against others or rogue practitioners or anything, try and be too clever, right? Like, you try and outwit it.
Yeah.
You try and outwit the thing. You don't just put a crossbow bolt through its head, right? Whereas Ava totally is the kind of person to just put a crossbow bolt through its head, which I kind of see how that would cut through a lot of the risks that other practitioners and others would kind of set up for defenses.
Like, we sort of saw that in this chapter, like the way she just fired the crossbow bolt. The second ex-Maggie said something that was outside the rules, it was just sort of so sudden. I was like, oh, shit.
She actually sticks to the rules she sets up, which is quite uncommon.
Yeah, even the people who have to stick to the rules that they set up don't do that as well.
Yeah. That's a good point. I like that. I still don't like Ava, but I look, I'm almost close to respecting her.
Okay.
Not yet though. So my comment that I pulled out was by Farmer Bob 1. And I really like this comment. I'm just going to read out the whole thing because it's quite short and I think it kind of gets to the point. Farmer Bob 1 says, "Why does Scarf Girl fear Andy more than Ava? Seems fairly simple to me. She sees Andy as more otherish and Ava as more goblinish. Goblins might wound or kill her, and Other has made a bid to steal herself. Scarf Girl understands Ava more than she understands Andy," which I think is just a really good insight. Ava is more, like, openly violent and possibly unpredictable, but ex-Maggie's kind of used to dealing with that, and so it's a bit more in her wheelhouse, whereas Andy will outsmart her, right? Andy is clearly very competent, and while he is semi-moral, he obviously isn't overly moral because of what he does for being a witch hunter. So that kind of explains why ex-Maggie is more wary of Andy than Ava, even though Ava is the more overtly dangerous one.
I think it's an interesting counterpoint to the comment I just sort of brought up. And I guess it depends on the type of practitioner. Like, maybe this just really speaks to what a great combo these two are, because someone like Laird probably has not much to worry about from someone like Andy, or, because they're going to be in a situation where they're trying to outthink each other. Meanwhile, Eva will just run in with a crossbow and start shooting.
Yeah, or just wait near a coffee shop or whatever and take him down with a crossbow bolt.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas for someone very different like Maggie, like, Andy's the one who really scares her because she knows he's going to be able to outthink her, whereas Eva's just, Maggie or ex-Maggie and Eva are just going to, like, meet each other in the middle, charging in. Yeah.
And I do kind of agree that they're ex-Maggie is probably closer to an Ava than an Andy, right? She is quite, anyway, so those are some comments from 5 years ago. Always insightful stuff in these comment sections. I love reading them out. But unfortunately, that's the end of our chapter for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you have a favourite comment that was left in the comments of 8.5, or a favourite comment in your head that you want to leave now, the best place to do that is in the discussion thread for this episode, which you can find linked down in the show notes below.
And don't forget, we're in the middle of a discussion question.
Oh, yes.
Which is, who do you think should be or could be the Lord of Jacob's Spell? I forget which one we ended up going with, but
should be.
It'll be in the Reddit thread. Yeah. So feel free. I don't think we actually said when we're going to be reading those out, so we're going to wait till 9.1, which is a week from today. So try to get them in I guess this chapter's comments or 8.6's.
We got some bonus episodes. We're back in that time of the month again when there are bonus episodes.
Yeah. So you got a bit of time, but don't forget the discussion question.
Yeah, and if this arc continues the way it has, we're going to be seeing more of the major players, and you'll get a real chance to evaluate who you think should be the Lord based off of the interactions that we see.
Yeah, definitely.
For more information on our show, you should go to the Duff Media website, which is duffmedia.com. Easy to remember. Listed there is more information about Deep Impact, as well as all the other great shows on the Duff Media network, of which there are many.
Yes, and while you're on that doofmedia.com website, there should be a link somewhere to the Doof Patreon, patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yep, and the entire Doof Media Network is supported by patrons, so your continuing support will allow us to keep making cool shows like this one. We've got Ward, my personal favorite, which is Vout of You, which is my favorite, I guess, bachelorette/bachelor discussion cast / slice of life cast.
Yeah, I think sometimes they talk about movies, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that, but I've never actually heard them talk about a movie yet. No, it's good fun. I definitely encourage checking it out. Another thing that I would encourage checking out is Wildbow's Patreon, which is patreon.com/wild. Oh, I bungled up that one. Sorry. Which is patreon.com/wildbow. If you head to Wildbow's Patreon, you can support him and ensure that he keeps writing all these great stories, like this here one here, Pact.
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far.
Mm-hmm. And we're like halfway through now.
I think we're almost exactly halfway through. Hopefully soon I'll learn who is in our cover art. But anyway,
it's not a real character. It's the longest of long cons.
Anyway, 8.6 will be on Monday the 22nd, so we'll see you all then.
See you then. Bye.